that a learner brings to a new learning encounter. This includes all knowledge that is available before the learning event, and which has been gathered or developed by any means, and in any situation, including both formal and, quite often, informal learning situations. Learners need enough previous knowledge and understanding to enable them to learn new things. They also need help making links with new and previous explicit knowledge. It is considered to be valuable to go through a process of what has been called activating prior knowledge. Teachers often go through this process at the beginning of a new topic. They also use introductory strategies at the beginning of lessons which are continuations from previous lessons. In terms of the practicalities of teaching, this is a process of making children think about the topic or remember what has been covered already. In terms of theory, it is to do with activating particular schemas. If it seems like you're not getting enough sleep, you're not alone. People have evolved to sleep much less than chimps, baboons or any other primates studied so far, a new study finds. Charles Nunn and David Sampson are evolutionary anthropologists. They study how humans have evolved to behave the way we do. Nunn works at Duke University in Durham, North Carolina. Sampson works at the University of Toronto, Mississauga in Canada. In their new study, the two compared sleep patterns in 30 different species of primates, including humans. Most species slept between 9 and 15 hours daily. Humans average just 7 hours of shut-eye. Based on lifestyle and biological factors, however, people should get 9.55 hours, Nunn and Sampson calculate. Most other primates in the study typically sleep as much as the scientists predicted they should. Nunn and Sampson shared their findings online February 14 in the American Journal of Physical Anthropology. The researchers argue that two long-standing features of human life may play into our short sleep times. The first stems from when humans' ancestors descended from the trees to sleep on the ground. At that point, people probably had to spend more time awake to guard against predators.
What nutritional guidelines should we be following? Well, probably the best source of nutritional guidelines are those that are issued by the American Cancer Society or the National Cancer Institute. And the American Cancer Society, for example, offers 4 really basic, simple nutrition guidelines. The first guideline, which in my mind is the most important, is to choose most of the foods that you eat from plant sources, and we can talk in more detail about that in a moment. The second guideline is to limit your intake of high-fat foods, particularly from animal sources. The third guideline is to be physically active and achieve a normal, healthy body weight. And the final guideline is to limit consumption of alcoholic beverages if you choose to drink at all. So Susan, one of the things we always hear about, from the American Cancer Society is this 5-a-day recommendation. Maybe if you could explain to our listening audience what that actually means. The 5-a-day recommendation is a very simple way of communicating the message to increase consumption of these plant foods.
The complementarity principle means the principle of use of different languages by bilingual people for different functions, which can be related to the fact that bilinguals generally acquire and use their languages for varied purposes involving different people, different circumstances or different contexts. Baker and Wainwright. 2021. In case of learning and teaching, complementarity principle emphasizes on a consistent developmental outcome for children with consideration of different contextual influences on their educational improvement and learning. In case of complementary teaching to students, this means deployment of an approach that carefully aligns positive inputs from different contexts as family, early childhood setting, home and school. Thus, teaching by applying complementarity principle means ensuring students' educational achievement depending on multiple contextual influences, instead of depending on any particular settings. In similar ways, this principle for learning means learners achieving educational efficiency through a holistic and integrated planning or approach where they can connect different learning contexts in meaningful way for ensuring successful learning. Coumarin, Hassabis and McClelland, 2016.
Disabled people were among the early adopters of personal computers. They were quick to appreciate that word processing programs and printers gave them freedom from dependence on others to read and write for them. Some of these disabled early adopters became very knowledgeable about what could be achieved and used their knowledge to become independent students at a high level. They also gained the confidence to ask that providers of education make adjustments so that disabled students could make better use of course software and the web, rather than just word processing. For some disability groups, information in electronic format, whether computer-based or web-based, can be more accessible than printed information. For example, people who have limited mobility or limited manual skills can find it difficult to obtain or hold printed material. Visually impaired people can find it difficult or impossible to read print, but both these groups can be enabled to use a computer and, therefore, access the information electronically. Online communication can enable disabled students to communicate with their peers on an equal basis. For example, a deaf student or a student with Asperger's syndrome may find it difficult to interact in a face-to-face tutorial, but may have less difficulty interacting when using a text conferencing system in which everyone types and reads text. In addition, people's disabilities are not necessarily visible in online communication systems, so disabled people do not have to declare the disability and are not perceived as being different.
As economic troubles flare up around the globe, the earning estimates of American firms who do business abroad begin to flatten. Without these international consumers to buy their products, there are fewer sales, which means that inventories pile up. When there is more supply than demand, prices go down. Lower prices would normally cause demand to pick up, but in an uncertain economy people tend to postpone purchases. We see this tendency in the American economy with computer products where consumers believe that the prices will go down if they wait another 6 months, so they decide to hold off. This tendency causes further gluts in the market, which eventually leads manufacturers to slow production. They lay off workers, causing domestic consumption to fall further since there is less money to buy goods. These effects ripples throughout the economy and create a deflationary spiral that can lead to a recession or even a depression.